I'm not interested in photo ops.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to Front Sight Firearms Training Facility as a thank you bonus for a one-time donation to RBN of only $500? It is a Commander lifetime membership with no yearly fees or dues. The training is free for the rest of your life with over 50 different classes. Then leave it to your designated beneficiary. You provide the approved firearm, holster, ammo, eye, and ear protection. Many features and bonuses are included, more than you would ever expect or believe. This is the ultimate graduation present, wedding gift, etc., etc. See the details. Go to RBN's webpage and frontsight.com to make it happen. May 5th is the last day you will hear this offer on this radio network. Help keep RBN alive. Tell 5.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, May 24th, 2018. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. It's been a very busy news day. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is sitting in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in with your comments and questions. And I want to start off, first of all, with two announcements. First of all, the Front Sight Training Academy deal, one more time, has been extended to June 2nd. So you can still take advantage of this opportunity. And it's a good opportunity. It really is. It's great training, and it's fun to get on out there and do the training here. So June 2nd on that one. The second announcement is I get a lot of email from people complaining about how the iTunes download of the podcasts or the RBN archives page won't come up in their browsers. Now, there was a problem a while ago, but it's been fixed for nearly a week. And it appears that people are not clearing out their browser cache. And so if you go to the podcasts later on to hear the rest of the show, you might want to look at clearing out that cache or bypassing it, and I just posted an article on how to do that to what really happened. So let's get on into it. Earlier this morning, Donald Trump simply canceled the upcoming summit with Kim Jong-un and just made a big show of, oh, this is all North Korea's fault because there's such open hostility toward the United States by North Korea and tremendous anger, and that's really not conducive to negotiation. Well, the North Koreans still remember how the beginning of the still technically ongoing Korean War, how much they suffered at the hands of the United States. And the United States and Japan and South Korea have been running warship exercises off their coast. The U.S. flew nuclear-capable bombers along their coastlines. These are very provocative acts. It's the U.S. who's acting in a hostile manner. And it's rather ironic that this guy who's supposed to be famous for the art of the deal has managed to utterly destroy this. They were making so much progress between North and South Korea. Then Bolton comes on in and flaps his gums, and Trump starts thumping his chest, and we're back to square one with North Korea. Trump is increasing the bellicosity with his comment about how the U.S. military is ready if necessary after the summit was canceled, implying that Kim Jong-un may, in a fit of anger, just haul off and launch a rocket at Guam or Japan or maybe even down here to Hawaii. In fact, I'm surprised they haven't blamed our volcanic eruption on North Korea, using lava that he bought from Vladimir Putin or some such silliness as that. Now, today, North Korea began the destruction of what remains of their nuclear test site. Reporters were there and are reporting that, yes, indeed, all of the tunnels in and out of the mountain have been dynamited and collapsed, and the buildings are being dismantled. So Kim Jong-un is moving forward, at least on that aspect. Not that the facility was usable anymore after that last big bomb. One of the things that really worries me is about how Donald Trump is coming on out there saying, you know, North Korea can talk about nuclear weapons, but we've got so many of them and they are so powerful, and it's just silly for North Korea to even consider. And again, we're seeing the United States emerge as a global bully. No more diplomacy, no more negotiation. It's might makes right. And right now, the United States thinks it is the mightiest nation on earth. And in regards to nuclear weapons, that's true. Maybe a little less so regarding conventional warfare. Now, getting on back to the Bloody Monday massacre, we're still seeing the repercussions of that. And apparently over in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Orchestra was having a final performance before their cultural diplomacy tour to Israel, and it was disrupted by activists shaming them for going to Israel following the massacre of the Palestinians along the border with Gaza. And apparently the music director, Yannick Nezat-Seguin, slammed his baton on the podium and walked off the stage. Some musicians began to leave too, but finally the activists were forcibly removed. Now, interestingly enough, U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley went to speak at the University of Houston, and she walked into a beehive. Just student activists confronted her about what's going on with Israel and Gaza and this criminal U.S. support for what amounts to a very slow genocide. And Nikki Haley was apparently up there on stage trying to look like, you know, she is too polite to comment. But at one point, you could see her start to really looking around at the size of the crowd. And at one point, she was overheard to just say the word Jesus under her breath. So apparently, Nikki Haley was completely clueless about how ordinary American people are feeling about all this stuff. And maybe this is her Buddha on the road moment. Of course, she's just an ambassador. Her job is to, you know, enforce U.S. policy at the United Nations. But apparently it did take her by surprise how strong the feeling is out here in the real country. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Now, when the new U.S. Embassy was opened in Jerusalem, there were diplomats from many countries who showed up, including Angola. And apparently they weren't supposed to do that because their government has just fired them. They just fired two of their senior diplomats for attending the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. And the reason they were fired was, quote, for failing to comply with procedures and harming Angola's good reputation. So this is still spreading all over the place. Now, over in Great Britain, there's apparently a motion in Parliament calling for the British government to suspend Israel arms sales because among the items sold by Britain to Israel are snipers' rifles that may have been used in the carnage on Bloody Monday. Now, as you know, Guatemala has announced they're going to move their embassy to Jerusalem, and the Arab League has now responded by canceling all deals with Guatemala. They've severed all ties. And this is done in accordance with the results of that recent Arab League meeting, which condemned Guatemala for moving its embassy and vowed to take appropriate political and economic measures against it, and they just did. The whole world is splitting apart because of this one boneheaded move. Now, apparently more and more artists are boycotting going to Israel. Apparently up in Berlin, the Pop Culture Festival is being boycotted by a great number of those artists as well, primarily because the Israeli embassy sponsors the event. And so they're saying, no, we're not going to be part of this. Israel's brand is damaged. It really, really is. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon your point of view, this is going to spread into the midterm elections. Because Trump and the Republicans, they're all pro-Israel, but the Democrats are seeing it is a hot potato. Support for Israel is not a good thing. Remember, during the primaries, Bernie Sanders actually came on out with this very timid criticism that says, we're going to have to say that Netanyahu is not right all of the time, which is a massive understatement. So because of the Bloody Monday massacre, we may be seeing the Democratic candidates basically become more critical of Israel, because they know that support for Israel has turned into an election loser, at least for the coming midterms here. Adding more fuel to an already burning fire, Israel's Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has announced that Israel plans another 2,500 settler homes in the West Bank. And they're going to promote building in all of Judea and Samaria. They want to use the old names. They don't want to use the P word anymore. Of course, Palestinian officials have long argued that the Israeli settlements are strategically positioned in order to prevent there from being a contiguous piece of land that would be the eventual state of Palestine. And yes, it does seem like that's exactly what Israel has been doing. And a reminder, these settlements are illegal under international law. Again, adding more fuel to the fire, early today, Israeli Navy ships attacked several Palestinian fishing boats and opened fire on them in the Sudanaya Sea, northwest of Gaza City, before abducting 2 sibling fishermen. Now, the WAFA Palestinian News Agency said the soldiers used automatic fire against several Palestinian fishing boats in Gaza territorial waters close to the shore, causing damage. These attacks are part of the daily violations against the Palestinians. The problem is that Israel arbitrarily moves that limit that the Gaza fishermen must stay within. They've had it as little as 3 miles. It's part of the starvation campaign is what's going on. Turning to the Al-Auda, which means the return, this is the Freedom Flotilla, and it's the main vessel, the Al-Auda, and a fleet of other boats, including sailboats. And early today, they were boarded and searched by the German Coast Guard in international waters, apparently on the orders of the German Ministry of the Interior. And they collected all the passports on board, wrote down everyone's personal data, searched the vessel thoroughly, asked for detailed information about ports of call along the way to Gaza, and inquired about the whereabouts of the Swedish sailing boats traveling in parallel. Now, many of the people on this ship are veterans of earlier Freedom Flotillas. They've been arrested. They've been hijacked. The worst case, of course, was when Israel killed 9 people on the Mavi Marmara. And this is all over food, medicine, coloring books. Now, as you know, there was a massive attack by Israel, massive attack by Israel on Gaza, supposedly in response to an army tent being burned. And they targeted the fishing harbor, and they struck a boat at that port that was supposed to go on out and meet the Freedom Flotilla. That, to me, sounds like it might have been pre-planned. Now, about the only good news coming on out of Israel right now is Israel's government has moved to basically pull back that law that allows Netanyahu to declare war all on his own. And now the Israeli Security Cabinet is saying he needs the permission of a majority of them as well before he can launch a war. A little bit of sanity has finally broke through, and I wish the Congress would do the same thing with their open-ended authorization for the use of military force to President Trump and whoever follows him. We should not have the war-making authority in the hands of a single person. All right, let's take a phone call. Raleigh in Minnesota. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I'm giving you a call about the irrational fear about North Korea. I've heard so many people say that North Korea could totally just shut down the American grid by shooting an EMP. up in the air, and then we'll be down for 5 or 6 years. But they don't even have toilets that flush in North Korea. They can't even keep the lights on at nighttime. How are they going to be able to shut down the American system with the EMP or send an intercontinental ballistic missile to us? And it's so bad that people are so scared. It's like the Iraq 2.0 all over again with the access of evil. It's just they moved the goalposts to being Iran, North Korea, and Syria only. There's no more Iraq. And it's absolutely appalling. I doubt that China would ever give such technology to North Korea. I know that it's a satellite state for that, but their economy is disjointed, and America is China's bread and butter, and they don't want to disrupt the gravy train at all.
No, they don't. And China has been working to sort of tamp down North Korea, and it seems to have been working. But yeah, they're cranking up the same old propaganda. We're going to get attacked. We're going to get attacked. We have to attack first. And when you have somebody who says idiocy like that, there are two things you should say. The first one is, why would Kim Jong-un haul off and attack us without reason, knowing the response would be the meltdown of his entire country into a puddle of glass? And the second thing that you need to keep telling people is, for all this scare talk about Iraq's nuclear weapons and Iran's nuclear weapons and North Korea's nuclear weapons, you need to remember that the only nation on earth to ever actually use nuclear weapons of mass destruction against the civilians of another country is the United States.
And we've heard a lot about there's a cult of personality, which is a tradition among communist nations like Stalinism, to worship and hail the leader. If we totally destabilize that country, what's going to come in its place? These people that have been worshiping that leader for such time, it's going to spill over into South Korea. Ultimately, if you destabilize North Korea, you're going to destabilize South Korea as well. And there's going to be a huge fallout with that. And I come to realize the proximity with North Korea and Japan. If you throw a beer bottle in the water in the ocean, it will wash up on a Japanese shore. They want that as a buffer zone between China, Japan, and Russia. Those three nations do not want a strong North Korea as well. And they're going to do everything they can to kind of keep that destabilized, but at the same time realizing that if they destabilize the region, that might even be worse than having a strong and divided, or should I say, it would be worse than having a unified Korea. A destabilized Korea might even actually be worse for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This is another very short-sighted policy, and it's not even really clear what the goals are here in the current situation. But South Korea has certainly shown no interest in military adventurism other than defending themselves against the constant promised threat of an attack from North Korea, which has not happened in all these years. And I think North Korea would just as soon stop having to spend money on nuclear weapon development and ballistic missiles and go to work trying to get their economy cranked up again and get into some industry. But for Trump to just pull out of the summit, it's just set everything back to square one. And all the important symbolic events like the Olympics, the close talks between Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, and all of that progress, it's just been thrown into the garbage disposal. And this is, obviously this is what Bolton thinks is a great idea, but it's not really clear why he thinks it's a great idea. I know they want to make sure that one belt, one road from China can't get to South Korea. That's one agenda. But, considering all the other wars the United States is fighting all around the world, getting into yet another one strikes me as very reckless. The only thing that really makes sense is trying to use North Korea to gin up a war against China. And we've been hearing a lot more war talk about China, about how China's the bigger threat than Russia. We've got to be ready for China. It's out of control, and it's insane.
Hey, Mike, I'm not going to say this is a preamble to war, but there's a little known fact about North Korea that they actually make the most pure crystal meth in the world. And a lot of the crystal meth that they make inside of North Korea which their whole GDP is relying on. According to an article that I wrote, Hidden Revolution, it was by a lady who was that originally lived in North Korea as well. I used it as a source. And their whole GDP is crystal meth, and it's the stuff that
I
they
have a
use
hard
in these
time
factories.
believing that one. I have a real hard time believing that one. And we need to be very, very careful, because over the years, we've seen the corporate media rely on people who used to live in the targeted country, and they're here to tell you how terrible things are, and pay no attention to that free house we just gave them, kind of thing. Why would anybody bother importing crystal meth from North Korea when it could be made out in the Mojave Desert for much less money?
That's correct, and and I kind of see that too, because she admitted
All right, well,
that
Raleigh,
she was a
sorry to cut you off, but we're going to have to let you go for a commercial break. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. I just got a funny email saying the North Korean crystal meth comes as a big surprise to all the meth labs here in the Pacific Northwest. Now, I'm sure that probably North Korea, like every other country on earth, has their own drug issue. But again, when you're getting a nation ready to go to an unjustified war of aggression, you have to demonize the enemy, dehumanize them, make them the other. You know, we're good, they're bad. Look at all the bad things they're doing. They're doing crystal meth. You know, they're building nuclear weapons. They've got rockets. And some of the, if you look back at some of the propaganda against Saddam Hussein in the run-up to that war, some of it got a little silly, where they were out there saying that defectors from Iraq are saying that Saddam Hussein likes to personally kill all the animals that he eats. And, well, every hunter in the world does that. But it was presented as shocking. How can he do this? Well, folks, you know, those bits of cow and chicken at the supermarket, they don't just crawl into those white plastic packages all by themselves. That's the reality. Palestine has joined 2 United Nations agencies and the Global Convention to Halt the Spread of Chemical Weapons. Nikolai Maidanov, the UN coordinator for the Middle East, told the Security Council the Palestinians had joined the Geneva-based UN trade organization UNCTAD and the Vienna-based Industrial Development Agency UNIDO and the Chemical Weapons Convention. So Palestine is behaving like it's a state, and the General Assembly has recognized it as a state, which, you know, obviously Israel would like that to go away. Getting on down to Syria, the United States just hauled off and led a strike into Syria. U.S.-led coalition warplanes have bombed several Syrian army positions in the eastern Syrian province of Deir ez-Zor. The attack took place shortly after midnight, well, earlier today. And apparently the attack inflicted limited material damage and no casualties. So the U.S. is in there, and apparently they've managed to figure out a way to not have to deal with Syria's air defense, because there are no reports of U.S. planes being shot down. And obviously Putin is trying to keep things from escalating by not getting involved there as well. Syria has come on out and said that the U.S., along with bombing the Syrian army positions, is bombing Syria's oil fields. They're bombing the oil wells so that the Syrian government loses crucial energy infrastructure and has to spend tens of millions of dollars to build it all back up again. Now, here's an interesting article. This came out of Mint Press News. As the U.S. tries to remake rather than rebuild northern Syria, local resistance groups emerge. And apparently, the population of Syria, the real Syrians, not these make-believe mercenaries who were shipped on in and said, we're a revolution, we're a civil war, but the real Syrian people, they're reaching a breaking point. There's a lot of discontent, a lot of anger, and it may be that the unraveling of the U.S. occupation of Syria may come from internal forces rather than external ones. Now, the Israeli parliament is planning new moves to back Kurdish separatism. In other words, they've gone back to this plan. They're going to break Syria up into chunks so that Assad is no longer a political rival for Israel in the region. And, of course, adding fuel to the fire on that one, there's a bill in the Congress that will say the U.S. officially recognizes Israel's sovereignty over the Golan. Now, Israel annexed the Golan back in the, I think it was the 1980s, and it was condemned internationally. The United Nations refused to recognize it. But they've occupied the Golan, and they want to keep it because of all the oil and gas. And if this bill passes in the United States, then on top of moving the embassy to Jerusalem, we're going to have this thing of breaking off the Golan from Syria and handing it to Israel, inflaming tensions in the region. And Israel knows this is what's going to happen. They've announced they're going to increase their defenses along the Syrian border. They're putting in more bomb shelters and more weapons. This thing is just spiraling out of control here. But according to an article in Lew Rockwell, Israel's next war is not against Iran or Syria, but Lebanon. They're going to go back into Lebanon. They're going to justify it by saying, we've got to wipe the terrorists, Hezbollah, off the planet. But we know what they want. More territory, obviously, and they want access to the Litani River, because that's what they've been after the last few times they've invaded Lebanon. So we all see who the aggressor is in all these wars. It's Israel, aided by the United States of America. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Hey, honey, I'm home. I grabbed a newspaper on the way home. Look at all the news today.
Don't you know that all you're going to get in the newspaper is propaganda, twisted news, and false information?
Honey, this is a national newspaper. It has to be true.
Ha! For some reason, the majority of the population believe anything the mainstream media tells them. The newspaper doesn't give out the important attention of what's happening to this country and news that affects our daily lives. Say, does that newspaper mention anything about the North American Union?
No, not that I can see.
I didn't think so. You need to go to www.newswithviews.com, where truth is more important than political correctness. That's www.newswithviews.com. Hey, don't throw that away. We can use that in the birdcage.
Okay, move over. Let me start reading newswithviews.com.
The truth? Read all about it at newswithviews.com. Newswithviews.com, where reality shatters illusion.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds, up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AROutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AROutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And speaking of aggression, we're just getting this story coming in now. Apparently, Israel has launched an attack on Syria. They had an Israeli warplane flew into Lebanon, violation of Lebanese airspace, and fired 2 rockets at the Daba'a military air base in the southwestern countryside of Homs province. The jet fired 2 missiles from the Syrian-Lebanese border. One of them was shot down before it hit the airfield. Unfortunately, the other one hit an arms depot, and it's caused a huge amount of damage and a lot of people injured. Casualties have been taken to the Homs hospital. So it does look like, yeah, just war on Syria. We're not even going to bother coming up with an excuse anymore. We're going to make war, and there's nothing you can do about it. Alrighty. Another little article here, this one from Russia Today. The U.S. is trying to bully the world into attacking Iran. And yes, that certainly does seem to be what's going on, where you have Trump threatening the European signers of the P5+1 deal with economic sanctions if they don't pull out. They want the deal gone. They want the door open to an attack on Iran. And that door will open when Iran goes back to enriching uranium. Forgetting the fact that Iran has not initiated a war of conquest in 200 years. And again, as I told that caller, for all this talk, this fear-mongering about Iraq's nuclear weapons and Iran's nuclear weapons and Syria's nuclear weapons and whoever's nuclear weapons, the only nation on earth to ever actually do it, to use a nuclear weapon of mass destruction on the civilians of another country, is the United States. So apparently Mike Pompeo, as you know, came out with his 12 basic requirements, which Iran will never agree to. And that's the way it was set up. And a lot of people are saying this is Mike Pompeo's 12-step plan for disaster with Iran. Now, over in Iraq, there's an object lesson of how regime change often backfires. And we've seen that throughout history. We know that the CIA's regime change in Iran in 1953 finally blew up in the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Well, following the recent elections in Iraq, we've seen something rather amazing. Muqtada al-Sadr, who used to be the enemy, the bad guy, who wanted to basically kill any Americans who were still in Iraq after they were supposed to leave, he and his party are now the government. They are not going to be U.S. friendly. They're going to sell Iraq's oil for whatever currency they feel is most in their advantage to do. What is the U.S. going to do? Invade Iraq for a third time? Over in Great Britain, their military have the begging cup out, and the defense secretary is saying, well, unless we spend more money on conventional forces, Britain might have to use their nuclear weapons on enemies. You don't want the nuclear weapons, so give us more money. You look at the obscene amounts of money spent on the military already, and it's never enough. They're worse money junkies than the money junkies. Speaking of Great Britain, a lot of people are scratching their head over the recent media interview given by Yulia Skripal. A lot of people are saying the language that was in it doesn't sound like Yulia and that it may have been scripted. And the Russian embassy is still saying they want direct contact with her to talk to her and find out what's really going on. And Britain is obliged to give the Russian diplomats an opportunity to speak to Yulia because that's consular conventions. It's international law. The diplomatic staff from any country can talk to any of their nationals inside the country. And Britain is steadfastly refusing to allow any diplomats or family members, or for that matter, anybody else, to talk to Yulia. The Skripals are basically in isolation. people are starting to warn that the conflict in eastern Ukraine can soon turn into open war. It's very close to that now. I mean, what's the yardstick you use to say it's a conflict today and it's war tomorrow? I guess the number of people being killed. But apparently on May 21st, pro-Kiev troops, backed up by artillery and machine gun fire, stormed the positions of DPR forces at the settlement of Golmovsky, north of Gorilovka. They failed to overrun the DPR defense, but killed at least one fighter and captured 3 others. Apparently they lost 10 soldiers, 4 were injured. So even with all these modern weapons, they're not doing well. Why? They're not motivated. They're being told to fight against their own countrymen. That's a tough sell for anybody. Lincoln had to resort to the slavery issue to get it going here in the U.S. Civil War. Now, Ukrainian troops have been spotted with American-made upgrades to the Russian RPG. And apparently they're being made at a company called Airtronic USA. And it's basically an upgraded version of the RPG-7. Fires 40mm rockets, and it's been upgraded with Picatinny rail, which for those of you who are into modern weapons, it's that little rail with the notches cut in it. It's a standard mounting system used on guns now, where you can put on EOTech holographic sights, lasers, tactical sights, vertical foregrips. So the weapons are pouring on in there. The U.S. has authorized and transferred Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine. Apparently it's 210 Javelin missiles, 37 launch units, 2 of which would be spares. And these are considered offensive rather than defensive. So they're arming up Ukraine like crazy. And today, Ukraine started actually test firing some of the Javelins. Now, once again, the so-called international investigation into Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 is claiming they have proof that the missile that shot down the airplane came from Russia. And their proof is they found a serial number on a piece of the wreckage of the Buk missile that they say brought down the aircraft. Now, the chain of evidence between that serial number and a specific launcher in a specific Russian unit is thin to the point of transparency. And that's not even addressing the issue of whether this part was just made on up. But they're still trying to push Russia bad, Russia bad, Russia shot down Flight 17. And the Ministry of Defense is saying, no, no Russian missile system ever crossed into Ukraine. Now, there were Buk missiles in Ukraine, but they were being run by the Ukrainians. I think the shoot down was an accident. I think they were aiming for Putin's presidential aircraft. The U.S. Army is pouring more troops and tanks into Europe, supposedly for a logistics exercise in Eastern Europe and the Baltics under the banner of Operation Atlantic Resolve. All told, about 3,300 troops of the 1st Armored Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division from Fort Hood, Texas, will bring 2,500 pieces of equipment across the Atlantic Ocean. And the equipment arrived in Antwerp, Belgium last weekend. It's being offloaded and prepared for onward transit within Europe. So they're just building up. It's very obvious that it's not a Cold War thereafter. This is going to be a real world war this time. The NATO chief, Jens Stoltenberg, is out there saying that this fissures opening up between the United States and Europe threatens the NATO alliance. And then he had a postscript that I agree with. He's saying that maybe getting into a new arms race is not really a good idea given the present economic condition of all the NATO members. Now, Secretary of Defense Mattis went on out to address the graduating class from the Air Force Academy, and they have 984 new lieutenants who are graduating. 400 are headed for pilot training. 69 will be trained to operate drones. But rather than being a cheerful send-off and a celebration, Mattis just told him point blank, you have to prepare for war. You have to prepare for war. Even with these nearly 1,000 graduates, the Air Force is running short on personnel. They've started a recall program where they're going to bring back 1,000 recently retired Air Force pilots, combat systems officers, and air battle managers. And they're going to be brought back to active duty, which is going to be a real shock for those who have already gone on to establish a new life. We're going to go ahead and take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Doing okay.
Mike, two things. One is Putin's got to stop being Mr. Nice Guy. The last time, twice, the DPR had the Ukrainian army on the run. The last time they had them so much on the run, they probably could have chased them right back into Kiev, taken over the whole country if they'd wanted to, the rebels. And Putin put a restraining arm on them because he made some kind of a deal with European powers. That's the treaty they had, which is being totally ignored now by the so-called Ukraine government, by the Nazi fascists that run that government. The other thing is, I think as far as Syria goes, Putin's got to knock out a couple of Israeli airfields so that they realize that they can't be doing this anymore to Syria. I know there'd be a risk of World War III, but there's a risk of World War III anyway. I don't think the United States would go to war over it. I really don't. I think there's so much anger at Israel. If you look at online, once you scratch the surface, it actually comes to, and I've told you before, I'm of Jewish heritage myself, okay? But I'm not a fan of Israel. I'm an American. I want the best thing for this country. I'm not into the Jewish religion either. I'm not into any organized religion. Okay, I want the best for this country. I want the best for the world peace. And I'm sick and tired of this rogue, out of control country. And by the way, they are causing anti-Semitism or anti-Jewishism, whatever you want to call it. Okay, because people are getting so angry, and you start sending troops over and to die for Israel, okay, or to fight for Israel or do anything else, I'm telling you, you will have real anti-Semitism or anti-Jewism, okay, because it's right scratches the surface.
See, unfortunately, that would play into Israel's hand. Israel needs anti-Semitism so they can whine and scream about it and get special treatment, like they're trying to, undermine the First Amendment. No, they welcome it. They need it for their political system to work. But I would rather stay focused on anti-Israel government. We got to keep the focus on them and not fall into this trap that Israel is trying to set by saying, oh, everybody's getting more anti-Semitism and it's not our fault.
You're right, Mike. I agree with you 100%. But I also am realistic enough to look at what's going on online, and that's a lot of people are thinking this, especially young people who would be subject to any kind of a draft, which would probably have to have, provided it's not a thermonuclear war, and then this draft doesn't do anybody any good. But if there's any kind of a ground war with with Iran, Syria, now it seems like Iraq again, or, even something like that, you still have to have a draft. You don't have enough volunteers to go in anymore. The volunteers, they're picking from the bottom of the barrel. Now you say they're going to call up Air Force Reserve. I hope.
Retired. They're calling back retired Air Force pilots and other special experts. They're being recalled to active duty.
I personally wish we'd have a mutiny. I wish the military would tell these slime balls, no, we're not going to fight your wars. We're not going to keep on doing this. We're going to defend the United States of America, but we're not defending the United States when we go over the Middle East, we go over to Ukraine, or wherever else you want. That's not defending America. That's being an imperial nation fighting for the globalists and whoever else. The Zionists, the Ziocons, like Cynthia McKinney calls them. That's what. And like I said, I agree with you about, keep understanding it's anti-Israel. It should not be anti-Semitism, anti-Jew. But the fact of the matter is, human nature being what it is, that's what it turns into. It's very difficult to explain. I try to tell people related to me or understand. Well, my sons, who are only half Jewish, because I didn't marry a Jewish woman. Okay, I have had two non-Jewish women, and I tell them, this is what this is going to cause, and I'm very concerned about it. By the way, one of my sons is, just got out of the Air Force. He did one tour. He joined after 9/11. Spent about 6 years in there, and then got out wisely. I'm worried he was enlisted, man. I'm worried he could be called back. He said he couldn't, but who knows?
Well, what did he do?
He was a loadmaster on a C-5A.
Okay. The recall didn't mention that kind of a position, but if this goes into full war, everybody with military background, they're all going to get recalled. We're concerned about our family, one of whom was in the Air Force, one of whom was in the Army, and especially the one in the Air Force has a specialty that would be in demand. She could get recalled. And we're concerned about that.
Even though it's been that means they could recall me, even though it's been many, many years. Okay? This is crazy. And for what? Trump is a madman. He's got madmen working for him. Bolton is a madman. Pompeo is a madman. And he's got these madmen working for him. And I think I'm starting to believe that Trump is not all there either. I really am. I mean, he can't be that stupid.
Okay, Mark, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Don't hang up. I'm going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. It really does work like the review says it does. I cannot believe that after the first few days, I didn't feel as sluggish or clogged up. It has had a profound impact on my physical, emotional well-being. I'm skeptical as most people about products and their claims, and I never write reviews, but this is a wonderful product and I recommend it to everyone. Great product. It has brought my blood pressure from the mid 150s over the 80s to the mid 130s over mid 80s, along with diet and exercise in just the past couple of months. Excellent. Thank you, David. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Mark in North Carolina. And Mark, back in the last segment where I mentioned where Israel's government actually wants there to be anti-Semitism in the world. And you need to understand that Israel hires a lot of students to just sit at home. They don't have to go to work at the fast food place to go on the computer. And they're trolls. They go on out and hurl insults at people. But they also plant anti-Semitic messages in social media so that Israel can point to them and say, see, there's anti-Semitism. So it's all a huge fraud, and you need to be aware of it. And our goal as the independent media should be to refocus the debate and say, we're dealing with the actions of a few individuals in the government of Israel. And this has got nothing whatsoever to do with the Jewish people as a whole.
Yeah, you're right. It has, because there's plenty of people that think like me. People of Jewish heritage who think that the way I do. I know I'm not the only one. I talk to other people, but unfortunately, when things start getting ugly, things start getting irrational. And I'm also concerned. Like I said, I'm very concerned about my own son. One of my sons who's got, like I said, he got out of the Air Force. He's not in the reserve or anything like that either. I blame myself too. Because I could have he joined at 18 a few years after 9/11. I didn't do anything to discourage him. I actually halfway encouraged him because at that time I hadn't swallowed the red pill yet, and I actually believed that the 9/11 BS and that the Islamic terrorists were all around ready to destroy us in Iraq and Afghanistan and you name it. And I swallowed that garbage. Okay. And so I blame myself partly because of that too, that he actually went in. Because if I had been strong enough on that and said no and explained to him what was happening, he may have not joined at the time. I would have talked to the recruiter. They started recruiting him right while he was in high school.
Yes.
And I told the recruiter to back off. But it just boggles the mind. I mean, I voted for Trump because I wanted to avoid this kind of stuff. Okay. I wouldn't have voted for Hillary anyway. I would have voted for Stalin before I voted for Hillary. Okay, but the fact of the matter is, I wouldn't have supported Trump in the primaries. I would have tried for Rand Paul. That was the guy, But I thought Trump had the best chance of winning, and I believe when he said he wanted to get us out of all these conflicts and stuff, including out of NATO.
Obama made the same promise back in 2008, and he didn't keep that either. We just have to understand. Candidates will say whatever they feel they need to say to get elected, and then they will immediately sell out to the special interests, which includes the war hawks.
I'll bet you if Jesse Ventura was the president of the United States now, he wouldn't sell out to anybody. Okay? He would stick to what he says. I think you'd have to kill Jesse to stop him. And he would have been smart enough, too, to get somebody as a vice president that they would have been even less happy with than with Jesse. He even said stuff like that.
Okay, Mark, I got to let you go. We got to do station identification. We'll be back with hour number 2 after these few words.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, as we hear all the war hawks going, rah, rah, let's bomb them and ask questions afterwards, we do need to take an honest assessment of what the military readiness really is. And we're going to start here with the poor F-35, just laundry list of huge problems. And now it's turning out that it doesn't have the range for real stealth strikes. This is a report from the House Armed Services Committee. And they're getting ready for the 2019 National Defense Authorization Act, and they're arguing over what will and will not be in there. And part of the problem is that the F-35 has been in development for 25 years. And during that time, the defense posture has changed. Now, in 2010, China introduced the Dongfeng 21D. This is an anti-ship ballistic missile with a range of 900 miles and a circular error probability of 20 meters. It's very, very good. There's a problem. Because of this missile, if the United States is at war with China or anybody who's bought that missile, they now have to move their carrier groups further out to sea, out of range. And this is a problem because the F-35 will then not have the range to fly a stealth mission into those countries unless they can be aerially refueled. And there's the rub, because aerial refueling tankers are not stealthy, and because of their size, probably can't be made stealthy. So remember what I said before about how the U.S. is spending vast sums of money to refine the weapons they fought World War II with, and they really weren't thinking about what they might have to deal with in World War III. Now, here's an interesting little article that came out of DefenseOne.com, which is a very pro-military site. And the headline reads, "Save the Tomahawk." And it's basically a puff piece. It starts off by acknowledging that the U.S. Navy wants to stop production of the Tomahawk, betting that a replacement will arrive without delay. Well, who knows what's in the pipeline? That's always classified anyway. And then this article goes on to say about, this has been an indispensable piece of every major military action, including the 2017 and 2018 strikes to punish the Syrian regime for using chemical weapons. And we know that that's all bovine excrement anyway. Probably the reason the Navy wants to stop using the Tomahawk is because of its poor performance. Because in that Syrian strike in 2017, half of the missiles didn't even hit the target airbase. And those that did hit the target airbase missed the buildings. The airbase was back in operation 24 hours later. Same thing with 2018, high failure rate in the air. But obviously there's some defense contractor wants to go on selling the Tomahawk, even if it's not really working. Because after all, that's what our nation is these days. We just sell product. Doesn't matter if it works or not. whether it's vaccines or weapons of war or cars or washing machines or whatever. Now, the Gerald R. Ford is now back in port for what they're describing as adjustments before it can get back underway to complete what had been expected to be a long testing period. Sea trials can run a very, very long time. The ship experienced a propulsion system issue associated with a recent design change requiring a return to home port for adjustments. Now, in an earlier article, they reported that basically the thrust bearing broke. And if it's the thrust bearing, unless it's built to be removed in sections, that's going to require dry docking the ship and pulling the entire propeller shaft. So, again, are we really ready for a war with manpower shortages? Stockpiles are down. And yesterday I reported on this story about how the Pentagon is concerned that U.S. industry, our current volume of manufacturing, can't support war for much longer. They're running out of stuff. They've run out of bombs. For a while there, they were flying bombs out of here in Hawaii to use over in the Mideast. That's how short they are. And this story has been picked up and carried around the world by other media, such as Russia Today. And the problem is that 25 years or 20 years of intermittent conflict have just drawn down the stockpiles. They've worn out the weapons we started with. They're not designed to last a really long time. They do a little calculation. How long will this survive in combat? Oh, maybe 2-3 weeks. Okay, well, that's all we design it to survive. And the military-industrial complex, like so many other corporations, has done a lot of offshoring. And there are foreign-sourced materials and components that are necessary for these weapons. So in the event of war and the U.S. gets cut off from those foreign sources, we don't have the manufacturing, the money, the manpower, or the moral authority to be moving forward with this anymore. We're going to take a phone call here from Mike in Chicago. Aloha, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I was listening to my friend. He's an older person. He is like 81 years old. So, and I was listening to what he was saying, and he was stating that North Korea uses slave labor with China in order to provide us with these cheap products that we buy. And I don't know if I could believe that or not. I had no idea that North Korea would be using slave labor in order to produce anything China. And I should have probably challenged him and said, well, what evidence do you have that, that this could be possible? And I guess I'll have to either research it myself or go back and ask him, what proof do you have that North Korea would be producing, slave labor products, namely for America? But I do know that China has a great influence over North Korea, but as far as, using North Korea for slave labor, I was going to ask you your opinion on that.
Well, China, there's been an issue before where North Koreans have successfully gone to China, and because of historical enmities between the people, they're basically seen on the bottom of the social ladder. Whether they're actually slaves or not remains to be seen. But again, it's an older issue. This is all being brought up to use as propaganda to convince the American people that there is no choice but to go ahead and have a war with North Korea. And we have slave labor in the United States right now in those prison industrial complex, privatized prisons. They're using those prisoners. They're paying them a few pennies so they can get some cigarettes out of the commissary, but they're certainly not making minimum wage. And it's not like they can say, I feel like quitting this job, I'm going to go home.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no minimum wage laws that apply to those individuals in the penitentiary system, which is private. Well, most of the prison system is privatized. Am I correct?
I don't know how much of the U.S. prison system has become privatized. It's a significant portion, though.
But we do know that they really can't force prisoners to do jobs. They probably encourage them, and many prisoners probably wind up working for pennies. You know what I mean? For nothing, for those cigarettes you were talking about, and it turns out to be a pretty profitable business, probably to say the least.
Well, one of the interesting parts of the contracts with these privatized prisons is that the police have to guarantee a certain minimum. The police and the court system have to guarantee a minimum number of prisoners in there, or there's a penalty paid to the operators of the prison. So there's a financial incentive to simply find and arrest people just to keep the number of workers in these prisons up. I mean, that's how corrupt the whole thing has become.
Wow, absolutely. It's really something to think about, profiting, and then, having investors invest into some type of a slave operation like that. It's pretty unconscionable, to say the least. But okay, well, I'll get back to you on that if I could pull up any more solid evidence about it. And thanks for taking my call then, Mike.
Yeah, and again, there are so many lies out there. You have to really be careful. We know that Wikipedia is compromised for technical stuff. It's a really good resource. For anything controversial, it's got just as much bias as Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or the corporate media. And we're literally facing a tsunami of lies right now, and we just have to move very carefully forward. Multiple sources, and just be very, very careful because they do want to trip us up. Anyway, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. And again, getting back to America's readiness to fight a major war, this one is going to scare you a little bit. Apparently, the Air Force has a problem with airmen who were protecting a U.S. nuclear missile base have been taking LSD. And apparently they've arrested 9 people. And there was a drug ring operating on the Air Force base, selling LSD and other mind-altering drugs. And it operated undetected for months at this missile base in Wyoming. And after investigators closed in, one airman deserted to Mexico. And obviously they're getting up on several court-martials. But again, I have this picture of 2 of these people sitting in that little command center next to the missile. And one of them says, "You want to do some mushrooms?" And the other guy says, "Sure, launch." We're going to take another phone call here. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I just want to start by saying I absolutely agree with Mark from North Carolina, and God bless him for calling in and being the way that he is. The second thing, Mike, you talked about the prison thing, and they can, of course, the prisoner, they can be denied, they can be put into solitary, they can be denied food or whatever. They can be forced to do just about anything. They're under total control.
Yeah, it's
They're
a prison.
under almost total submission. It's a prison. But you remember a couple of years ago, Mike, there were 2 or 3 judges in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Who were taking bribes from the owners of the prisons, the private prisons, and they were falsely convicting juveniles,
yes,
hundreds of them, to go to prison because, of course, the prison owners make money on the number of inmates.
Yes.
It's like completely corrupt.
Like everything else in this country, it's a racket.
Mike, I sent you a couple of times, and I know you talked about it back in January. The story that I think is germane now about Jerry Seinfeld going over promoting Kill Arabs fantasy camps over in Israel.
Yes.
And I don't know. In particular, after what's going on in Gaza and the massacres of the last month and a half, I would really like to see Jerry Seinfeld. A lot of people don't know that he did that, but can you imagine, like Americans going over to Alabama to a fantasy camp where they were shot at targets of black people? And that's exactly what's going on.
That's exactly what's going on. And we've run a couple of articles about Seinfeld doing this, and the general reaction is that this is absolutely horrific. And you're right. If this was happening in the Deep South, if there was a fantasy camp to go on down and pretend you're in the KKK, there would be a huge outrage. But Israel does this, and they're protected by the corporate media.
And you know, like I have gone, like there are really a ton of honorable, wonderful. I've gone out of my way. I've met Norman Finkelstein. I've met Gilad Atzmon.
Yes.
My best man at my wedding was a guy just like Mark. I was the best man at his wedding.
Okay.
And there's a ton of these guys, but there's also a ton of guys who don't think like that, and who are putting through this. The people who don't think like that and put Israel first are like a fifth column. They're taking away our rights to speech. They're getting us into these wars, and their interests are Israel first. And look at Soros, look at Haim Saban, look at Sheldon Adelson,
yes.
Look at Bloom, look at all the people who financed the scotching of the Iran deal. They had nothing to do with our interests. And so the only people who can really put a muzzle on these rabid Israel firsters that are driving us towards war are the rest of the Jewish community, the honorable people, the Finkelsteins, the Atzmans, my best man Larry, Mark, guys like that, because we'll get shouted down, but they'll listen, I hope, to those guys. So.
Well, again, getting on back to what Nikki Haley experienced down at the university in Texas, apparently it caught her by surprise just how intense the American people are about what's going on in Israel. And I imagine being a UN ambassador and being inside the administration, she was walled off, and protected from any reports that the American people were just really angry over what's going on, both with the Monday massacre and with Israel's obvious complete control of our government. And she may have been living in this little bubble of illusion saying, the American people are fine. They're perfectly happy with this. And boy, she got a wake-up call. It's not going to change her behavior, but from the descriptions of her reaction, it did take her by surprise.
Like she like so many of these people, they're just taking the Citizens United. Here's the money from Sheldon Adelson and AIPAC and blah, blah, blah. I want to be president. I want to be famous. They've drunk that Kool-Aid. They're never coming back. So
probably not.
She'll never be reformed.
Probably not. Okay?
But, yeah, thanks, Mike.
All right, Peter, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to start with Stephen in Oregon. I may have to take you through the commercial break. What is on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. How are you today? Aloha.
I'm fine.
Hello.
Yes, you're on the air.
Yes. About the LSD on the Air Force Base. There was a famous UFO sighting on the Air Force Base where they shut down the ICBM monitoring or the radar there. So maybe they were taking LSD when that occurred.
Well, that is a very scary thought, that the people who are in charge of these defense systems, and especially nuclear missiles, that they're operating impaired. And I think the real scandal is not that these airmen were on these drugs and running the drug ring. It's that it went on for so long. I mean, if there was ever a case for mandatory drug testing, it's got to be the guys with their fingers on the nuclear weapons.
Yes, and I would say the politicians, too.
I would agree with that one. I mean,
and the police officers.
you listen to Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi sometimes, and you have to wonder, what are they on? Did you know that members of Congress have their own pharmacy inside the Capitol building?
Yep, and I'm sure they're insider trading on all that stuff too. So what can you say?
Yep. Okay. Anything else?
All right. Nope. Just wanted a big shout out. Love you. Take care.
All right. I certainly will. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to take another break here for commercials. When we come on back, we're going to be doing more about the domestic political situation. A lot of stuff happening there as well. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these few words.
My name is Don Wiskin, and at 42 years old, I suffered a massive heart attack, lost 35% of my heart to damaged tissue, and was supposed to spend the rest of my life on disability. What did I do? I took Extendivite, a garlic and cayenne mix of 7 herbs which rebuilt my heart and gave me back my life. For over 17 years now, I have made this formula available to you, so you don't have to suffer the same thing I did. Clean your blocked arteries and strengthen your heart and boost your natural immune system. I'm 60 years old now, and I still work every day. To get your Extendivite, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822, or visit heartdrop.com. Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
As a listener of RBN, you're surely concerned about being informed and being ready for whatever may come. Please consider the following questionnaire as a soul-jarring wake-up call. If you answer no to more than 2 of these following questions, you probably aren't going to make it through any major disruption in our country. The questions were compiled by people that have been there. Are you really ready? Do you own your own firearm for the primary defense and protection of you and your loved ones? Have you ever been professionally trained to stand against life-threatening behavior? Have you ever practiced enough to fire 500 rounds during a 2 to 4 day time frame, day and night? Can you load, unload, fire, and clear a jam in total darkness? Have all the adults in your household been professionally trained? Are you, life and death, comfortable with your abilities with pistol, revolver, shotgun, and rifle? Are you aware that everything that you do to prepare for an emergency is a waste of time, money, and energy? If you haven't honed your abilities to their highest level to protect and keep what you have, do you have the repair parts that will most likely be needed for each of your firearm, and do you have the ability to install those parts? Could you completely clean every firearm you own? Are you aware that your body won't go where your mind hasn't been? In other words, without proper training, followed by regular practice, you probably will not win a gunfight. Well, how did you measure up? Take the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to start correcting your deficiencies by receiving your Commander Lifetime Membership with Front Sight Firearms Training Facility. A one-time donation to RBN for $500 will give you a Commander Lifetime Membership at Front Sight as a tremendously huge thank you bonus. See details on RBN's webpage to make it happen. The clock is ticking. You had better be ready before it happens.
Welcome to What Really Happened Radio. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. And now, set your eyes on the future and let's consider what really happened.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And things are really starting to intensify around the revelation that the FBI had at least one spy inside the Trump campaign. And apparently they're getting ready for this top secret White House meeting where law enforcement and intelligence officials plan to basically explain what was going on with this FBI informant during the 2016 campaign. Guy by the name of Stephen Halper, long links to both FBI and CIA, was part of a spy operation against Jimmy Carter during the Reagan years, and he was paid $1 million for his intelligence work during the Trump campaign. That's a lot of money. FBI informants don't get paid that kind of cash. Most of them are recruited to work for free out of a strong sense of their patriotic duty. But Democrats have basically demanded that they be allowed into this top secret meeting, from which I conclude they're scared what's going to come on out about Obama. And apparently the so-called Gang of Eight wants a briefing before they leave on their congressional recess, which is tomorrow. Congress doesn't return to Washington, D.C. until June 5th. So the White House is basically caving on in there. Story coming on out of the Political Insider. Apparently, the revelation of all of this skullduggery, it looks like Obama spied on at least 7 Trump campaign members. Apparently, it started all the way back in 2015 when Trump first started talking about a run for the White House. And apparently, they used private entities like Fusion GPS to conduct some of the surveillance. Now, they did some of the surveillance in Trump Tower. Remember when Trump came on out and said the tower's been bugged? And everybody said, oh, that's ridiculous. That would never happen here. But apparently, after the election, United Arab Emirates Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan met with 3 transition team members in the Trump Tower, Michael Flynn, Jared Kushner, and chief strategist at the time, Stephen Bannon. The meeting was surveilled, but because of the surveillance law, the names of Americans picked up in foreign surveillance must be redacted. So what did Susan Rice do? She unmasked the names, and then she played dumb when Devin Nunes discovered what she did. And now there is talk that Susan Rice may be trying to strike a deal with the department or with the congressional investigators, try and get out of this mess with her tail feathers intact, as it were. Now, I've seen this story surface in several locations, but apparently there are agents in the FBI who want Congress to subpoena them so that they can testify about problems caused by former FBI Director James Comey and former Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe. And apparently this has been picked up all over. Now, these agents are not allowed to just come on out and reveal this information. That would violate the confidentiality statements that they sign when they become FBI members. Some of the information may actually be classified as well. But if they are subpoenaed by Congress, then they can tell what they know, and they want to. Former federal prosecutor Joe DiGenova is saying they're just waiting for a chance to come forward and testify. Boy, would that be something to see. Now, Jared Kushner is back in good graces. He's now gotten a security clearance, apparently a permanent one. That's a special status symbol in Washington, D.C. And he's met again with the Mueller team for the second time in a session that lasted more than 6 hours. Mueller is still digging and digging. Now, as you know, some of the indictments Mueller came down with are against Russian nationals and Russian companies. And it was expected this would just go nowhere because there's no extradition. And that would be the end of it. The liberal media would just keep pumping on Russia-Trump collusion without any evidence. But see, there's indictments out here. We've got indictments, and indictments equal guilt in the eyes of the corporate media. But one of the Russian companies, Concord Management and Consulting, has come to the United States and hired American lawyers and demanded a speedy trial, which is their legal right, because there's a 44-year-old federal law that says a federal criminal case must begin within 70 days from the date of the indictment. Mueller is stonewalling. He's trying to say the complexity of the case warrants excluding the speedy trial law and delaying the trial. Basically, he's admitting he doesn't have anything behind those indictments, and he wants to avoid actually going to trial and being humiliated by it. And of course, there's always the agenda of dragging this all out to the midterms. Oh, yes, Trump-Russia collusion. Look, we've indicted all these Russians. Haven't had the trial yet, but trust us, they're guilty. Now, interestingly enough, Mueller could get shut down by the last person he ever expected, because his case against Paul Manafort was supposed to be a slam dunk. But Manafort's lawyers have now targeted Mueller's prosecutor, Andrew Weissman. We talked a little bit about his dirty past yesterday. And he's part of their latest legal challenge. They're arguing Weissman is the source of leaks that tainted the jury pool by portraying Manafort as a crook. If that is proven, that's the end of that case. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
If you are one of the millions of people who get migraines, you need to know about MigRelief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist who created MigRelief, the patented dietary supplement that addresses nutritional deficiencies in adults and children with migraines. Thousands of physicians and pharmacists recommend MigRelief.
Call 800-MIG-7354 or visit MIG911.com.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus magful clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far 5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the domestic politics here. And Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley has basically ripped into the fact that the text messages between Strzok and Page have been redacted. And there is a very strange cryptic reference in one of these. The White House is running this, and of course, whatever this is has been redacted. And so Grassley is out there saying that it's time for all the redactions to be removed. And once again, we're seeing the Department of Justice and the FBI just stonewall this. And I wish Donald Trump would do his job, because all those officials in those bureaus, they work for the executive branch, and he has the authority to fire them at any time he wants. And I think a good round of firings is in order. Trey Gowdy is out there saying these recovered FBI texts are showing the fix was in. There was just this tremendous pro-Hillary, anti-Trump bias throughout everything. Nobody was being objective. Nobody was being professional. It was all get Donald Trump, get Donald Trump. Now, as you know, Bloody Gina Haspel has been confirmed as CIA director, and her supporters are trying to basically get away from that whole torture issue by saying, see, this is good. This is, women's empowerment. She's the first female CIA director in history. That's a really good thing. Look, Donald Trump just, he's definitely supporting women for positions of responsibility. But the reality is the CIA's record of torture has been brought front and center again. And that's because Haspel played a key role in the agency's program of torture and was head of station in at least one of the CIA's black sites in Thailand where torture was done. And she held multiple senior roles at the CIA Counterterrorism Center, which oversaw the entire torture program. She was also involved in the destruction of the video recordings of the torture sessions and was less than forthcoming when asked why that had been done. Nevertheless, the Senate confirmed her. Here's the thing. The CIA already knows torture is not an effective means of acquiring intelligence. The person being tortured is just going to say whatever they think the torturer wants to hear to make the pain stop. Yes, I have Saddam's nuclear weapons. They're planted in my garden underneath the azaleas. And yet they kept on doing it. And as it turned out, after torturing innocent Iraqis to death to find Saddam's nuclear weapons, it turned out they never existed. Now just imagine for a moment that you are an Iraqi, you have been grabbed by the U.S. because somebody wanted the reward money, and you're being tortured for something you can't possibly give them. Man can't have an experience like that and remain entirely cheerful now, can they? And that's why all these other countries are hating us. They don't hate us for our freedoms. Everybody loves freedom. Only governments and religions hate freedom. More is coming on out about the document dump of Hillary Clinton's emails as Secretary of State. Again, we reported yesterday, there was no firewall, as Hillary claimed. There was, in fact, a communications conduit that went right from the State Department to the Clinton Foundation. And State Department exports substantially increased to governments that donated to the Clinton Foundation. It's just out there. Why is she not being investigated? Why are they still obsessed with Donald Trump? Now, Judicial Watch has filed 2 lawsuits against the Department of Justice for documents on top officials' ties to the Clinton dossier creator, Fusion GPS. And again, we're dealing with a Department of Justice that is refusing Freedom of Information Act requests and stalling and stonewalling. So, Judicial Watch wants information about top Justice Department official Bruce Ohr and his wife Nellie Ohr's involvement in that Trump dossier authored by Christopher Steele. Now, until his dossier related demotion, Ohr was the 4th-ranked official at the Department of Justice and Steele's contact. Now, we know that dossier was a complete fabrication. Steele may not have even actually talked to anybody inside Russia. He may have just made it up and kept the money. We're not dealing with moral people here. So, It's going to take a while, but this stuff is getting dragged out. And as it comes on out, your job is to make sure your fellow Americans see this stuff and realize the depth of the lying that we're forced to live our lives in from government and corporate media. Michael Caputo is out there putting out more information saying there were 2 surveillance attempts in May, only one of which has been made public. And that's the one in which it appeared the FBI was trying to actually entrap some of the Trump people into a collusion situation. Now, that's not law enforcement. That's why cases based on entrapment get thrown out of court. Getting onto the economic news, Trump has signed the biggest rollback of bank rules since the 2008 financial crisis. And of course, Wall Street is having a really, really good time. They think it's just absolutely wonderful. Basically, they just undermined a lot of the Dodd-Frank regulations for the smaller and medium banks. Apparently, the big banks are still going to have some regulation on them. But opponents are saying that these changes could open up taxpayers to more liability if the financial system collapses, or increase the chances of discrimination in mortgage lending. Now, both of those are bad, but the reality is that when the financial system collapses, yeah, they're going to turn to the taxpayer, the American people, because the poor are always made to pay for all. Russia has announced they're ready to ditch the US dollar in favor of the euro in foreign trade. They're going to drop settlements in the US currency, but there's a catch to it. They're saying they are willing to do this and allow the European Central Bank to make the profit off of the currency rather than the Federal Reserve. But the EU has to take a stand against the latest US sanctions on Moscow. Now, the EU may do that. They're already taking a stand against the sanctions being put on Iran. Now, Finance Minister Anton Sulianov is saying, as we see, restrictions imposed by the American partners are of an extraterritorial nature. The possibility of switching from the US dollar to the euro in settlements depends on Europe's stance toward Washington's position. Bit by bit, the world is turning away from the dollar. Bitcoin has slumped below 7,500. Apparently, it's lost about 20% off its recent peak. The markets all ended slightly in the red today, not enough to justify jumping out of a building or anything. Deutsche Bank is getting ready to slash 7,000 jobs with the axe hardest on London and New York. They're calling it a major restructuring. So they're in trouble. Now, over in Russia, Rusal is this aluminum company, and they've gotten very creative trying to deal with the sanctions because on May 2nd, the U.S. Treasury issued a guidance related to Russia's Rusal and N Plus Group, saying the United States would reverse sanctions on the company if Oleg Deripaska cedes control of the companies. And that's what he's just done. He's sold out, and the top executives of these companies have all resigned, I'm sure, with very, very hefty retirement bonuses. And so now the U.S. has to drop the sanctions against Russia aluminum, at least coming from this company. Apparently, this is according to CNBC, Silicon Valley is in another tech bubble. Everybody thinks that these tech stocks are going to do wonderfully well. Not when you have an economy so bad people can't buy the whiz-bang gadgets. But the stocks have been pumped on up by speculators. It's in a bubble. It's larger than it was in 2000. And what's going to come is going to be worse than the dot-com bubble burst. There's no such thing as a free lunch out there, but it's amazing how many venture capitalists think there is. Getting on over into Europe and the immigration issue. As you know, Italy has just formed a new Eurosceptic anti-refugee government that has Brussels worried. Up in Sweden, which has just been trashed from the refugee crisis, the open borders, and their liberal government just saying, no, it's going to work out. It's going to work out. Please don't talk about it. Apparently, they're coming up on their elections there, and the anti-immigration Sweden Democrats have hit record high support in the latest polls. The backlash is growing over these EU open border policies. We might be seeing the beginning of the end. We might see the EU break up. Now, in Germany, people are demanding a probe into the government asylum policy following the revelation of a bribery scandal in which refugees who had money were given asylum status. It was a pay for play. And the government is now having to review thousands, tens of thousands of these asylum applications to find out if asylum should really have been granted. But right now, that whole process, the Federal Migration and Refugee Agency, their integrity has been shot. And the German people, who are also very tired of the refugee crisis, they want answers. Their borders aren't supposed to be for sale. On this next story, let me preface it by saying I can't believe this nonsense is still going on. But apparently over at the NFL, following major ratings declines, advertisers abandoning them, and political arguments all over the place, NFL owners have unanimously approved a new national anthem policy that requires players to stand if they're on the field during the performance. Now, believe it or not, this was already in the NFL rules. They just weren't being enforced. Now, this new policy imposes stiff fines on any player who sits or kneels on the field during the national anthem. Now, they do have an option of staying in the locker room until after the anthem is played. But I can't believe this nonsense is still going on. Over at the Jets, their owner has said that he will pay the fines if his players defy the new anthem protest ban. This is coming from New York Jets chairman Christopher Johnson, and he released this statement on Twitter that he's planning to sit with Coach Bowles and discuss with the players and say that if they want to kneel or sit, that he, the owner, will pay the fines. Why are they keeping this thing going? It's just ridiculous. It really is. And here's another one that should have been over and done with a long time ago. Over in California, a judge has issued a final judgment in favor of a baker who refused to bake a cake for a same-sex wedding, ruling that cakes celebrating events are a form of speech protected by the First Amendment, which includes the right to not speak, or in this case, not make a cake. Now, last August, Maria and Eileen Rodriguez del Rio wanted this wedding cake from Tasty's Bakery owner, Kathy Miller, who declined on the grounds that affirming a homosexual union would violate her Christian beliefs, which is kind of interesting because now the Pope is saying being gay is okay. And so rather than just do the reasonable thing and go to another baker and say, we need a cake, this gay couple filed a complaint with the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, arguing that the state's UNRRA Civil Rights Act forbids businesses from refusing to provide services on the basis of sexual orientation, among other grounds. So that little bit of liberal nonsense is over and done with. You go into any store anywhere, there's always a sign on the wall there. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. So a little bit more of a pushback against political correctness there. It's still out of control around the world. You're going to love this next one. Over in Italy, there is a couple, parents, just had a brand new daughter, and they wanted to name the daughter Blue, B-L-U. And basically, the mother said they chose blue because it's the color of the fifth chakra. And the father is saying blue stands for Bella Luminosa Unica, which means beautiful, vibrant, and unique. But apparently, they've been hauled into court and told to change the baby's name to a traditional girl's name, or the court will impose one. And this all comes about because of a presidential decree that all newborns should have gender-appropriate names. That really is ridiculous. It's none of the court's business. Now, as you know, a measure has been introduced in Congress called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act of 2018, and the bill includes an overly broad political definition of anti-Semitism, which includes criticisms of the state of Israel. And we have to oppose this bill. It's an attack on the First Amendment. And if they carve out an exception for Israel in the First Amendment, then they'll carve out an exception for vaccines, for GMO, for anything. They'll gut it. They'll shred it because they hate that First Amendment. First and foremost, this bill was actually more or less cribbed from a State Department guidance memo for use in domestic and civil rights law. And that State Department memo wasn't written to be a law. And basically, it was authored by a State Department official for non-legally binding foreign applications. They even admit it's a loose guide. And there have been problems because this definition is being abused in Title VI cases to restrict academic freedom and punish political speech. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll-free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com.
Do you worry a lot? Whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, I mean the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay, unemployment.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, we're still talking about this bill that was proposed Wednesday that says criticism of Israel is Jew hatred, which is like saying that the only reason people criticize the Nazis is they hate the German people. That's how silly and absurd this is. But it is clearly unconstitutional, and the ACLU is out there saying this has to be stopped. This is an attack on one of the most fundamental freedoms we enjoy in this country, which is freedom of speech. Of course, Israel and Israel supporters are pushing for this, especially following what Israel has been doing to the people of Gaza. They don't want any more criticisms. They just want to be able to do what they want to do and not have to listen to anybody whine about it. Out in California, they're actually considering a bill that will give health care to illegal immigrants. And Orange County Supervisor Michelle Steele basically said this will flood the state with a wave of illegal immigrants from other states and other parts of the world looking for this free health care coverage. I wonder how they're going to pay for it with so many legal Americans leaving California because of the high taxation. California is going to go belly up. It's going to turn into a third world meltdown. There'll be a few bright places like Disneyland and the movie studios and Bel Air, Beverly Hills, Malibu. Everything else is going to be terrible. So let's get into some science and health issues. I put up a story here. This is a follow-on to the opioid crisis that our nation is facing right now. And the study is called Dirty Doctors. And basically, this is coming from detox.net. And they basically analyzed data from the Drug Enforcement Administration's Cases Against Doctors report, looking for how many doctors were being arrested for overprescribing opioids. Now, in February of 2016, Dr. Hsu Ying Lisa Tseng of Los Angeles became the first doctor in the U.S. to be convicted of murder for overprescribing opioids to multiple patients. She was sentenced to 30 years to life for the deaths of 3 patients. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. You have to be very careful and very aware. Don't just accept as fact what the TV ads for medicines are telling you or what the doctor's telling you. Their latest embarrassment, this is coming out of Natural News, there is a breast cancer medication called Lapanatinib. And it's just been discovered in a recent study, it actually accelerates cancer cell growth. The exact opposite of what it's sold and administered to do. We're going to take a break for station identification. Back with hour number 3 after these few words.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to Front Sight Firearms Training Facility as a thank you bonus for a one-time donation to RBN of only $500? It is a Commander lifetime membership with no yearly fees or dues. The training is free for the rest of your life with over 50 different classes. Then leave it to your designated beneficiary. You provide the approved firearm, holster, ammo, eye, and ear protection. Many features and bonuses are included, more than you would ever expect or believe. This is the ultimate graduation present, wedding gift, etc., etc. See the details. Go to RBN's webpage and frontsight.com to make it happen. May 5th is the last day you will hear this offer on this radio network. Help keep RBN alive. Tell 5.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And again, a reminder, the Front Sight Training Academy promotion has been extended until June 2nd, which is coming up fairly quickly. But if you want to take advantage of the deal, it is still there until June 2nd here. We're going to go to the phones now. Francis in North Carolina. Aloha, Francis. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, aloha to you both.
Aloha.
Hey, I probably should do some more research before calling you about this thing so I can comprehend what's really going on with this thing about some judge saying that, oh, you have to pick the child's name as being either male or female or whatever, blah, 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 blah. My several questions is, one, how did this come to a judge's attention to start with? Who complained about it? And what's wrong with the parents' current choice of a name for the child to start with?
I have no problem with it. It sounds like a very lovely name. But apparently there was this decree in Italy that newborn babies have gender-appropriate names, meaning traditional names, boy and girl names. And I guess that somebody at the hospital was looking at the birth certificate and the chosen name, and they ratted them out, or somehow or other. I don't know the exact mechanism. But yes, they have been approached by the court system and told either they come up with a gender-appropriate name for their little girl, or the court will basically force them to accept one. And I think it's wholly inappropriate, and it's another one of these ridiculous things to come out of all this gender identity nonsense.
Well, aside from the gender identity nonsense, aside from that, the question is the court paying the bills for that family to start with? Is the judge, whether it's male or female, the one that's actually the parent of the child to start with? Or is the parent the actual ones that's the parent of the child to start with? It's one thing for a judge, whether male or female, sticks their nose into a scenario like this because they have a status quo quotient in the country to start with. That's one thing, but I'm sorry, shoving it down a parent's throat about what they should or should not do with their child, the parent is the one feeding and clothing that child under their roof, not the judge.
Yes.
So the judge really should butt their nose out of it.
I absolutely agree.
The one the judge is not taking care of the child. The parents are. And plus the judge doesn't own the kid. They didn't have the kid. So it's like, on top of that, whoever the administrator was that ratted them out, they're just as much to blame. And quite frankly, should they really be working and ratting off on people about what they do or do not do on their birth certificate and all that stuff? I'm sorry.
They may be required. It may be a job requirement. There may be a deal going on, like if you go to Geek Squad, those technicians are being recruited and even paid by the FBI to search computers that come in for a repair, looking for any kind of contraband, child porn, anything like that.
No, that's wrong.
It is
That's
wrong.
not to
It's a
say that-
ridiculous, gratuitous law, and I think the government of Italy really has more important things to be working on than guaranteeing the gender appropriateness of a baby's name.
You think? I mean, well, I'll look at it this way. If someone has something really funky on their computer and all that, when they go to turn in to have it worked on or whatever, that's one thing. You know, eventually it's going to be discovered. But for an organization that's supposed to provide a service to the public, going and reporting it, you know, how would they feel if the tables were turned? And for one thing, how do they know that the FBI is not getting off on that same child pornography to start with?
Well,
and they're just jealous.
According to Edward Snowden, that NSA data center in Utah is the world's largest collection of amateur porn stolen off the computers of people around the world.
Well, there you go.
Yep.
There you go. I mean, I don't think it's the everyday person that's the offending party. I think it's the alphabet soup agencies that are. And they're just jealous at what people, the everyday person, comes up with. But then again, you can say that, well, I'm holding one of my nieces, and there's a newborn baby. Does that mean that I'm into child pornography? No. There's a big difference. I mean, they can have their diaper on or not have it on. What you going to accuse me of being into child pornography because I'm holding my one niece that's been newly born? You know, there's such a thing as throwing common sense out the bloody window.
Oh, common sense is an
what's
endangered
really
species. Common sense is an endangered species in this country.
Never mind. But I'm just bewildered by the whole. It's like, yes, I have to agree. As though Italy and other countries don't have enough on their plate to be dealing with, and they got to go and stick their nose up someone's tail end. I don't get it. I really don't. It defies common sense. But anyway, that's just me. Have a great one.
All right, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Mary in Santa Fe. Aloha, Mary. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I'm calling about the cancer therapy drug you just talked about before the break.
Yes.
I can't even say the name. It's like lepitonin or... Well, my question would be, I thought that these drugs had to go through stringent trials, different phases, 1, 2, and 3. First they start with animals, then they go to humans. And the FDA process is one big bureaucratic mess, one of the worst, I think, in the Western Hemisphere. So how do they get these drugs passed? And then suddenly they come up with, oh, it accelerates the breast cancer. I don't understand how that happens.
Well, because in the testing of these drugs, there has come to be a huge amount of fraud. And, you know, because it is all a racket, there's a lot of fraud. Science journals are realizing that a lot of so-called peer-reviewed articles cannot be reproduced, and they're being written in exchange for grant money or something else to basically push a particular position. If you will remember, there was this CDC report that came on out that claimed to prove there was no connection between vaccines and autism. And you need to remember the CDC itself owns patents on several vaccines that are currently in use. So they had a financial motive for the study to go one way. And then later on, one of the lead authors on this report went public and said it was a complete fake. They cherry-picked the data to come up with a desired conclusion. And if that same kind of fraud has been brought into the testing of pharmaceuticals, I'm sure that what you're getting from the management of the pharmaceutical corporations is, we need this to market right now. We need this to get approval right now. And just make it look good. And if there's a problem, we'll fix it later.
Wow, that's just incredible. I mean, how can we really trust the therapy we're getting when that kind of fraud happens? And then what would be the fix for that? Is there a fix for that? Do we have to get rid of the FDA? Or do we have? I don't understand how we could even change that.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to let the country reset. We're just going to have to sit back calmly. It looks like it's hovering on the edge of collapse, both economically and politically. And then our task is going to be to start a new government in this land, and I would start with the Constitution and the first 13 amendments, and we reimpose all those limitations on the size of corporations and how much power they can have, limits on how much money they can give to politicians, so it doesn't just become this free-for-all of big money corrupting the system to make more money.
I couldn't agree more, Michael. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, and we are going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. Now, you probably remember the big stink over the EpiPen and how expensive it is. It's meant to have in case of an emergency, to help somebody who's going into shock, anaphylactic shock, time to get to a hospital for treatment. And so you buy this pen. It only lasts for about 18 months. It can only be used once, and then you have to throw it away and get another one. Well, and it's very expensive. Down in South Africa, their medical engineers have built an EpiPen replacement that costs $16 a shot. And they're testing it to last for 5 years and have a replaceable cartridge. Now, that seems to be doctors who are really trying to be doctors and deal with real medical emergencies. I think most anaphylaxis is an artifact of the out-of-control vaccine campaign. That certainly seems to be true with peanut anaphylaxis. Peanut anaphylaxis was unknown when I was a kid. And then they start putting peanut oil in vaccines as an adjuvant, and all of a sudden you've got all these people who literally go into convulsions if they even smell a peanut. That's why products at the supermarket have these labels saying this product was prepared on machinery that may have processed peanuts. We may have the world's most expensive medical care system, but it's actually making us sicker and sicker, which is a good business model. It boosts their profits. We were talking about that yesterday. The indications are exposure to glyphosate destroys the beneficial bacteria in your gut, the biome. And there are a lot of diseases like irritable bowel syndrome and Crohn's disease where that's the primary symptom. The gut biome has just gone totally bonkers. Do they take glyphosate off the market? No, they have pills. They have pills for Crohn's disease. They have pills for irritable bowel syndrome. It's all about the money. Now, we were talking about the Ebola outbreak in the Congo and the concern that more and more patients are showing up in the urban environments. And the Congolese medical people and the World Health Organization are trying to get ahead of it and get anybody who might have been exposed isolated as quickly as possible. But it's a very serious situation. We need to keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, down in India, they've had an outbreak of what's called the Nipah virus. It's killed 10 people so far, and apparently this one also is highly communicable. 9 patients have tested positive for the virus. They've been quarantined and are being treated rather. So, a lot of illnesses out there. But at least you've got your pills for Crohn's disease here. Poor Tesla. They can't catch a break. And I'm really sorry to see it because I do agree electric cars are the wave of the future as soon as we come up with a more economical, environmentally friendly way to generate the electricity that has to be put into the battery to make the car go. And it's good that Soros stepped on in with a financial investment to keep them going a little while longer. But apparently, Consumer Reports has taken a look at the Tesla Model 3 and discovered the brakes don't work all that well. In fact, it takes longer to stop the Tesla Model 3 than a Ford F-150 full-size pickup truck. Now, I don't know if that's an engineering oversight. They made the brakes too small, or maybe the car is simply too heavy. But that's a stopping distance of 152 feet from going 60 miles an hour. And that is definitely not good. All right, so let's start talking about our volcano because things are going on. There's been another ash plume at the Kilauea crater, and they're just saying there's going to be more. There's no end in sight here. There's no reason to think that we've seen the worst. Again, nobody really knows. It's just everybody out there getting their FaceTime on the news media saying, well, we could see this and we could see that. Ultimately, nobody really knows. It's just wait and see. Now, down on that east rift zone, more fissures have opened up. There's a lot of lava pouring on out. Much of it is going into the ocean, creating the Lays clouds. And the lava has now reached this power plant. And I want to put to rest some of the wild speculation that has been going on all over the internet about the Puna geothermal venture. First and foremost, the plant is already shut down. They've brought in diesel electric generators to take up the load, so there are going to be no blackouts when the lava actually hits the physical power station itself. Now, they've capped over these geothermal wells, and there may be explosive gases in there, but by the time the lava melts the steel over those pipes, the lava itself is probably going to contain much of any eruption that comes on out of there. There's actually a concern that the pipes themselves could start erupting because they're drilled down into basically the magma chamber or the lava fields. But there is no threat of a major explosion. There's no threat of a blackout, and certainly no threat of a tsunami that will wipe out the entire Hawaiian island chain. The only way that would happen is if a sizable portion of the Big Island slid off into the ocean. Now, it has happened in the past, geologically, 70 times that scientists have figured out. And we do know that that south flank on Kilauea is loose. There's a big crack along it. And during that last 6.9 quake, it did slide another 2 feet down toward the ocean. So it'll happen sometime. You know, could be tomorrow, could be another 1,000 years. Nobody really knows here. But a lot of people they're starting to unnecessarily panic over this issue of the power station. You have to stay calm and take care of yourselves. Now, everybody seems excited over the fact that all of a sudden, in the nighttime photos of the lava erupting, blue flames are now starting to shoot up from fissures in the rock. And what's going on is as the lava burns up plants and shrubs, it's producing methane that gets trapped in the lava, and then it bubbles up to the surface, comes out through the fissures, and because it's already above the temperature of spontaneous combustion, it erupts into flame. And a lot of people are saying, wow, it's a rare phenomenon. It does happen. But in addition to the red and orange, there are now blue flames coming out of the volcano. There's a new malware warning about malware called VPN Filter, which is infecting routers. 500,000 of them so far. Tech giant Cisco is saying that these routers have been compromised in preparation for what could be a major cyber attack against Ukraine. So they're already spinning this. This is Russia doing it to attack Ukraine. And actually, this is being reported by Reuters, so Cisco may not have actually said that. Reuters may have added that part on. Most of the other articles about this VPN filter don't mention the Russia connection. But anything bad that happens is going to be blamed on Russia and Iran, and everything good that happens, Donald Trump will take credit for. But if you have not changed the default password on your router, you need to do so. In any event, this VPN filter is apparently using exploits that are already known about in these routers, things that you can't fix yourself, things that are in the hardware, meaning quite possibly NSA-mandated backdoors. And when it first came on out that the NSA was mandating backdoors into the hardware as well as the security software, the first thing I said is the cyber criminals are going to find this and they're going to use it. And 500,000 routers is enough to build a huge, huge botnet. over in Michigan, they're about to have a state law come into effect that will ban any state or local government from aiding the National Security Agency's program that gathers data on Americans in violation of the Fourth Amendment. So we're starting to see a pushback, at least from Michigan, because everything the NSA does is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. It delegitimizes the government. And worse, as we can see from all this out-of-control cybercrime everywhere, these mandated backdoors have not improved the security of America's IT infrastructure, which is what the NSA said they were supposed to be doing. It's actually made us much more vulnerable. Our computers are wide open to criminals. And it's the fault of the NSA. Now, there's a woman who is saying her Amazon device recorded a private conversation and then sent it out to a random contact in the family's contact list. This happened up in Seattle, and they've contacted Amazon to say, what the heck is going on? We'll be right back after these few words. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443.
Many people tell us about their experience with Extendivite. Just listen to what Glenn has to say.
Prior to taking it, I had diabetic neuropathy. The Extendivite reduced that significantly. Acid reflux was reduced. I had athlete's foot, very severe. Trimmed that down to about 75% dandruff, almost completely gone. I had occipital neuralgia at the base of my skull. I was having migraines, reduced by about 90%. Heart palpitations, my heart would kind of stall out. I would skip a beat. Very uncomfortable. And when walking from downstairs going to sleep, by the time I got to the bedroom, which is just one flight of stairs, my heart was pounding, coming out of my chest. My vision was blurry. This completely solved that problem. Great product. Thanks.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network, thank you.
If you got the money, honey, we got the bombs. We'll plant them anywhere you like and blow up anyone. Whip this world into a frenzy, killing babies, dads, and moms. If you got the money, honey, we got the bombs. If if you got the money, well, we won't say we did.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I'm actually getting a lot of email over this story about the Italian government ordering a name change for the baby. And let's see. One of the comments was, is the directive probably started out with good intentions in order to keep parents from trying to raise their daughters as boys and their sons as girls. But it went overboard, and it definitely did. Now, they probably should have made the order gender-appropriate name or a non-gender name, in which case blue would be perfectly acceptable. Somebody wrote on in to say that he knows this lady who's expecting a little boy, and they're planning on naming him Knowledge. And yeah, that's a little bit out there as well. I mean, what do you want to do? Make the kid a target for teasing and bullying at school? It really is silly. Now, getting on back to the world of computers and computer type stuff. As you know, Donald Trump wanted to basically block critics on his Real Donald Trump Twitter channel. And his critics basically took him to court, and the judge ruled that the First Amendment protects critics on Twitter because the Real Donald Trump Twitter channel is a public forum, not a private one. And so Donald Trump has to let the critics be. Well, shouldn't that also apply to Israel? When we criticize the government of Israel, that is political speech, and that is protected under that First Amendment. But we're seeing so many double standards and hypocrisies coming out of this government. It's like they've actually lost any idea of what they should be, other than money-grubbing sellouts. A little bit of good news. If you are a fan of the golden age of piracy or the early exploration of the Americas, there was this fabled Spanish galleon that sank 300 years ago. It was called the San Jose. It's considered the holy grail of shipwrecks. And it sank off the coast of Colombia with an estimated 17 billion, with a B, in treasure. And it has now finally been found with the help of an autonomous underwater vehicle operated by the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. So that is a huge archaeological find, oceanographic find. It shows the technology is definitely growing for these underwater autonomous vehicles. I'm sure that the money is going to help the government of Colombia, especially with everybody pouring over the border from Venezuela, because obviously Colombia gets a big cut of that. And it's good news for everybody around there. And I can't wait to see the photos of it myself. Woods Hole Oceanographic, boy, when I was a kid, I thought that would be a fun place to work. They've been involved in so many of these amazing discoveries. Robert Ballard worked out of Woods Hole when he found the Scorpion and the Titanic. So they're really a well-respected institution. And they're just coming up with all kinds of really cool things. Okay, now... getting into human-caused global warming. Earth has actually cooled 0.5 degree since the Trump election. And this coincides with the article that came out a little while before saying that we've just gone through the most dramatic 2-year cooling period in the last century. But that, of course, is not stopping the corporate media from coming out with all these stories about, oh, the temperature is just going to soar, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And whether they're just doing it to not have to admit that they lied or were wrong, or if they're still out there thinking they can grab more of your money with a carbon tax, which is really silly. I mean, that volcano we've got erupting down there on the Big Island has put more greenhouse gases into the air than all of you Americans did last year. That's just the reality. That's nature out there. Now, out in the Southwest, they're in a dry spell. It's a serious drought, and people are already starting to compare it to the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Well, a big part of that has to do, again, with infrastructure, because the United States government put together this water transport system all over the West and Southwest, which helped turn a lot of that land into viable farmland. But that water system has not been maintained. It's cracked, and today it's only delivering about 30% of the water it was originally designed to produce. And farmers out there in the Midwest and the Southwest are saying, we're not getting enough water. We're not able to grow the crops we used to be able to grow. And nothing's being done about it. They have the same problem out there in California. There are cracks in the aqueducts, leaking millions of gallons of usable water into the desert where it's not needed. There are breaks in the water mains underneath Los Angeles itself. Same thing. Usable, drinkable water is being lost. So anyway, we're going to take another break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443, and we'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MigraLief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MigraLief migraine formula. MigraLief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MigraLief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354, or visit MIG911.com.
This is too good to be true, except this time it is real. 100%. No joke. How about a $25,000 membership to Front Sight Firearms Training Facility as a thank you bonus for a one-time donation to RBN of only $500? It is a Commander lifetime membership with no yearly fees or dues. The training is free for the rest of your life with over 50 different classes. Then leave it to your designated beneficiary. You provide the approved firearm, holster, ammo, eye, and ear protection. Many features and bonuses are included, more than you would ever expect or believe. This is the ultimate graduation present, wedding gift, etc., etc. See the details. Go to RBN's webpage and frontsight.com to make it happen. May 5th is the last day you will hear this offer on this radio network. Help keep RBN alive. Tell 5.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read a few from Amazon.com. Dr. Sam Serino reviewed the Extendivite product. Good ingredients, feeling much better since taking product. It seems that the tablets work well. Once again, thank you for your product. My acid reflux has really improved thanks to the Extendivite. Together with my thumb joints, the pain is gone and I'm able to grip things much better. My friend has peripheral arterial disorder and their lower legs were hurting in a red color, but thankfully there has been a significant improvement. Kind regards, Janice. My husband feels a big difference using Extendivite. Thank you. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And I'm going to step back in the talking points to computers because some new stories came in that I really want to share with you here. Apparently, cracks are appearing in the camera lenses of Apple's iPhone 10. Remember, this is the one that goes for about $1,000. Nobody seems to know why. Apparently, customers who own these phones have gone on social media and support forums saying the breaks just appear. They've never dropped the gadgets, and some are saying that the cold weather might be the cause. Others are saying that heat from inside the device could be the cause. But the problem is Apple is refusing to cover replacement handsets under warranty so that those that have this problem and really need to use those cameras, they have to pay for a brand new device. Now, this comes just weeks after Apple admitted there is a flaw that prevents their Face ID system from working properly. And we're seeing a continuation of this trend. Get the product out there quickly. We got to make money, keep the stockholders happy. We'll let the customers find the problems, and then we'll fix it somewhere down the road. Although in the case of the lens, that can't be fixed with a patch. Now, Apple used to be a really good name. If you go out on eBay, you can search for an original Apple II computer, and they're still out there and still running. I have a Commodore VIC-20 that still works just perfectly. And these days, American companies are putting out products that are failing right out of the box. And for Apple to not honor the warranty, that's going to cost them business. And they're already losing business here. Now, there's a concern being raised over at the Daily Mail that Android devices, including phones from this one Chinese company, ZTE, are shipping with malware already installed on them. Now, one of two things has happened. Either somebody made a deal with ZTE management to put this malware on there for compensation, or it might have infected them accidentally. And I say that because many years ago, when I was an Amiga developer, I worked with a company in Santa Monica that was building a game based on the Space Shuttle Challenger. This is before Challenger exploded. And the game was all finished, it was all tested, was ready to go, and they made up the disk to go to the disk duplicator, not realizing that the blank disk, or the disk they thought was blank, did have malware on it. And so it went on out there, it was on every single released copy of the game, and the company went under. But we know that cybercrime is no longer some script kiddie in their parents' basement playing with JavaScript and just being mischievous. Cybercrime has become big business. It's become organized crime. And I think that may be a factor here as well. But if you're shopping for a new Android device, you want to make sure that it's not coming from ZTE. This malware situation is totally out of control. Down in Australia, not too long ago, they started this weird Facebook trial in which users were asked to send in nude photos of themselves to somehow fight revenge porn attacks. And if it had been successful, would have been extended to the US, Great Britain, and Canada. When this thing first started, I said, no way is this going to fly. And I don't know how many people actually sent in the pictures. Probably they got some. But Australia's online safety watchdog has now called off the trial, saying it presents data privacy concerns, particularly in the wake of Facebook's Cambridge Analytica scandal. If it's online, it's vulnerable. You've got to keep as much of your life private and off the machine and off the net as you can. Obviously, computers and the internet are an indispensable part of our daily lives, but you've got to keep a BBL, a big black line, between the business that you do on the computers and your private life. Don't put it out there. We've heard these horror stories about cyberbullying, and it would be nice if the global cyber community were a bunch of really nice people, but there are bad people out there, and they're always looking for more creative ways to be badder. Now, something flashed by here I want to get down to. Yes. Apparently, one of the FBI's redactions was the cost of Andrew McCabe's desk, I think, was hugely expensive. So these redactions are not serving the national security interest at all. Now, not too long ago, there was a CDC researcher, Timothy Cunningham, who was an epidemiologist with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and he was reported missing February 14th from his northwest Atlanta home, and then his body was eventually found in the Chattahoochee River. And you have to wonder what's going on here, because the Fulton County Medical Examiner said this guy committed suicide by drowning. That's the official medical examiner's verdict. He just intentionally drowned himself in the Chattahoochee River. Now, the family is saying that he was not diagnosed with depression, but his parents questioned whether he could have been given some kind of judge that changed his behavior drastically in the days before his disappearance. Maybe he stumbled on something, because we know there's a lot of stuff going on over at the CDC that is, well, questionable, like that fake autism report here. Apparently, this is just breaking now. Obama and Valerie Jarrett ordered Comey and Lynch to gin up an email trail. This scandal is turning out to be worse than Watergate. It really is. Okay. It really is insane out there. So let's basically go back and do a recap. It looks like what was happening when Trump stepped into the political scene, he was being spied on as early as 2015, in many cases by using privatized cutouts like Fusion GPS, because spying without a good reason is in fact illegal. Then they ginned up this Christopher Steele dossier to try and create a case of Russian collusion sufficient enough to go to the FISA court and get a warrant to spy on Trump and their people, and make it look like it was quasi-legal. Except, of course, the dossier was completely fraudulent, and that invalidates the FISA warrant. But I'm sure they're all going to be using, James Comey's Hillary defense. We didn't mean to do evil. We're just trying to do what we're supposed to do. And now we're finding out there was a massive spy operation inside the Trump campaign. The new number we're getting is 7 individuals. And they were all spying on the Trump campaign, and after he won, spying on the Trump administration. And apparently some of these spies were not just spying. They tried to entrap members of the Trump team into circumstances that would be made to look like Russian collusion. And they just kept pushing this and pushing this and pushing this as hard as they could. Now it's all backflashing on them. It's all starting to come on out. And all I can say is thank goodness for Judicial Watch, for Freedom Watch, for Trey Gowdy. I wish he wasn't leaving the Congress, and all these other, this handful of members of Congress who really still believe in the rule of law and uncovering this corruption, because the American people have every right to know what's been going on. So apparently they're still screaming about the redactions. Anyway, our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and I could use some calls to get us out of this show here. And apparently another liberal situation. Over in Great Britain, poets of color are underrepresented in Great Britain. So they want a quota system on poetry now. It's just insane. Absolutely insane. So again, we're bigger than Watergate. And I don't know if you're old enough to remember Watergate. And it took a long while to come on out. When you see the movies and you hear about it, oh, big scandal exploded onto the scene. No, actually, it didn't. It ran from the middle of Richard Nixon's re-election campaign until after he'd won re-election. And the only newspaper that was really covering it was the Washington Post. And that was back when the Washington Post was still a newspaper with integrity. And it was an abuse of power, and Nixon resigned rather than face an obstruction of justice impeachment and a trial in the Senate. And the reason he did that was because there was a question that sooner or later somebody was going to ask, and nobody wanted it answered. And that question was, why, when his re-election was a foregone conclusion, did Richard Nixon break into the Watergate and into those Democratic offices, or have his men break into the Democratic offices at the Watergate? The answer to that question would have brought the government down, because the Democrats had acquired photos of the three tramps in Dealey Plaza, November 22nd, 1963, and identified two of them as Nixon henchmen, E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis. That's why E. Howard Hunt was leading the break-in at the Watergate. It was his rear end on the line there. And nobody wanted that to come on out. Not even Richard Nixon's worst enemies. And that's why he was persuaded to step down. And then Gerald Ford came on in, issued presidential pardons to everybody, said our long national nightmare is over, and basically just started burying it all. There are deep, dark, black secrets in our nation's history that the government still does not want you to know about. You know, the last message from Winston Churchill to Roosevelt before the actual attack on Pearl Harbor remains classified to this very day. So, Americans are the most lied to people on the face of the earth. And the first step toward getting away from that is to understand and recognize that. You're being lied to constantly by the government, by the corporate media, by corporations in general, by those TV ads. And you have to develop skepticism as a survival skill. You have to learn how to be analytical and think about what you're being told. They don't want you to think. That's why most of the communications are emotional. Oh my goodness, North Korea is using slave labor. Oh, the horror, the shock. They don't want you to think about it. Have you ever noticed when they hold a public hearing on an issue, a new reactor, a new oil pipeline, or whatever, that the public comments are held to just 2 minutes in length? And there's a very subtle reason why that's being done. Because in 2 minutes, you can do an emotional appeal. But if you're trying to make a logically structured counter argument, you run out of time. They want you to believe, not think. Because if you believe, you are easy to manipulate and control. That's why it's so important that you continue to support independent media. Because we're here to teach you to be skeptical, to teach you to think. Don't want you trusting anybody blindly. Be your own best analyst. The world's in a really, really bad situation right now. We've got wars all over the place, 7 officially acknowledged. North Korea, all the progress being made there has been undone. We're back to square one where Trump is talking military invasion. The U.S. and Israel are starting to pound on Syria seriously. The U.S. is still gunning for Iran. And at the same time, we're hearing all these horror stories about how America's most expensive weapon systems don't really work all that well. How the Pentagon is saying our manufacturing can't sustain the material output necessary to fight these wars. And the reason that is of concern is because on the day When the government realizes it cannot win these wars conventionally, that is when they'll resort to the nuclear weapons. We're on a really, really bad path, and we have to get the rest of our fellow Americans to open their eyes, pardon me, take the red pill if you prefer that metaphor, realize they're being lied to into yet another war, who bears the cost of that war, who gains from it, and they have to start thinking. Stop believing, start thinking. Beliefs are a very, very bad thing. They're slave chains on a mind. That's why when you're very young, they get you into kindergarten, they get you into Sunday school, they start indoctrinating you with these beliefs before you're old enough to realize the big people are often full of it. And as you grow older, your personality forms around those core beliefs until they become part of your identity. That's why you have people who say, I am a Republican, or I am a Democrat, or I am a Christian. They become that which is believed in, and they lose their own identity in the process. And it takes a real effort of will to walk away from those core beliefs. It can be very emotionally unsettling, in fact, but we have to start that process. Because along with being debt slaves, we're also belief slaves. And both were not done for our benefit. So we have a right to be very concerned. And I'm calling on all you Riveros Rangers. You need to go on out and evangelize what's going on. It's like Stadmiller says, keep RBN alive, tell 5. We've got to get the word on out and get people looking at this information. We've got to get them off Facebook and Google and YouTube and say, these places hide things from you. They don't want you to know what's really going on and how terribly close we are to a global conflagration. Rented lips. All right, we're coming up here on another commercial break, and we're going to be back here with the last segment of our program today after these few words. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield Tactical Bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day.
heart attack, or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slows circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Join Mike on the air. Call toll-free 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we actually have a caller on the line, Mateus in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. How you doing today?
Doing fine.
Hey, I just wanted to share a police corruption story that happened to me personally. Do you have time for that?
Yeah, we've got about 4 minutes before the end of the show.
Okay, so I had a 1983 Toyota Celica. I beautifully restored it. Second love of my life for like 3 or 4 years. And one day, police pulled me over and started searching the vehicle illegally, and then eventually ripped up my carpet behind my passenger seat and found a repair job of a rust hole the size of an apple that was expertly repaired, and then didn't say anything, went back to his cruiser, and but it actually canceled my license and called the tow truck without telling us. And then my girlfriend had more courage than I did to demand answers, and then he finally said, "Oh, it's already canceled, the tow truck's coming." And then he made it like most likely for me not to be able to make arrangements of somewhere to store it. And I didn't have any private parking. I always park it on the street. Turns out that if I wouldn't have been able to make arrangements, it would have gone to the police pound. So I file a complaint to our government. I get a detective onto the case. 9 months later, he rules in my favor that it was a legal search and seizure, illegal stop, different things like that. So then it goes to disciplinary action, and which is this police officer's boss.
Yes.
Working in the same office. And the boss says, "I'm going to narrow my focus down to these 2 points, which are not important." He's going to narrow my focus, and based on these 2 points, I'm dismissing everything. There's not a problem here. So then I have 10 days to have a final tribunal oversight. I live and breathe. I have no quality of life for 10 days. I'm totally obsessed. I make this court case winning presentation with facts and pictures and documents and everything. And then the person rejects it by falsely citing the criminal code. And then when I asked him, I said, "Oh, what are you referring to in this criminal code?" And then he gives me a number, and I look up the number. It's got nothing to do with anything. So it's just a complete corrupt.
Okay, let me step in here because we're almost out of time here. Were you ever given a reason why a repaired rust hole in the car justified cancellation of the license and a tow truck?
No, that was one of my main arguments, is at the very least, if I was going to be sent for government inspection, fair enough, but give me my 30 days to prepare for that inspection.
Okay, so they were basically saying you couldn't pass the safety inspection.
They were saying that I'm not going to be allowed to drive my vehicle to prepare for the safety inspection. So if I want to prepare for the safety inspection, I have to tow it around all over the place, tow it to a mechanic, tow it to an inspector, tow it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Tow trucks are very expensive, and the point was that it was an illegal stop. There was no ground.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of that same thing down here. Anyway, Mateus, I got to let you go. We're coming up here on the end of the program. And apparently John McCain is out there in the news again, pushing his book, The Restless Wave, now admitting he knew the Trump dossier was fiction. that, yes, he gave it to the FBI. He'd do it again, and said that anybody who doesn't like it can go to heck. So that's what we have in terms of our politicians here. And it's not a pretty picture. And obviously McCain is trying to rewrite his own history with his book, and hope that that becomes the accepted version of history somewhere down the road. Okay. I'm not hearing the music, but I think we're in the outro portion of the program here. So stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here, share them out with everybody that you know. We'll be back here tomorrow, and aloha, America.
Extendivite is more than just a heart tonic. Most basic diseases are caused by yeast